Welcome back for another episode of Errant Adventures, the solo actual play podcast where stories are told at the speed of dice. With me, Steve Morrison, your game master and solo player. Now come on, let's grab the dice and see where our story goes. Welcome back to Chapter 21 of Book 1, Meridian. Last time, Sejana Lushale continues her investigation of the stolen crates after a night's rest by digging into the other ships present during the theft. She comes across info about the Hector, a trader out of Sembria that has a crew member with ties to Imperial intelligence. Sejana considers them her prime suspects because that former IIS member would certainly have knowledge of stealth suits. She also finds a financial link between the owner of the Hector and Murad's twin Lupanian guards. She contacts local security forces to see if they have any contacts or leads who could give her insight into native Creusians acting as smugglers from the starport. They point her in the direction of Ragnar, a foreman at a mining operation on the strip of land outside the floating city of Creusis. Once at the mining facility, she makes her way to the dorms and finds Ragnar's quarters. She bypasses the lock and enters, but he attacks her with a wrench. She narrowly avoids his attack and stuns him, tying him up. Back at the Wolf, Einur receives a system-wide comm informing him of the presence of an unidentified group of ships in system. Ragnar struggles against the electro-cuffs and stares up at Sejana with distaste. I don't know what you think is going to happen here, but you better let me go. Sejana drags a chair over and sits. Soon enough, but not until you answer some questions. Ragnar spits. I'm not talking to you while you're still tied up. Sejana holds up her stunner. Don't make me use this on you again. It doesn't seem like you're well liked here, and your shift doesn't start for another 7 or 8 hours. We have plenty of time. He growls and says, What do you want? I wanted to give you some work, actually, and if it weren't for the fact that you're the person my client wants to work with, I'd probably just kill you and make it look like you couldn't stand your sad existence any longer. Sejana leans back in the chair, adopting the relaxed posture of a saber cat, toying with her prey. What kind of work do you need from me? I've already got a good steady gig here. Come now, Ragnar. We've done battle. We don't need to lie to each other now. I know that your work as a foreman isn't the only thing you do. She smiles. I'm a broker of sorts, and a client has some cargo that we need to move from the starport without the usual customs checks. I have it on good authority your people can make that happen. I don't know what you're talking about. I'll spell it out for you. You have a network of native Creusians who move cargo from the docks to a location you control. Then your clients pick up their cargo outside the government's awareness, and life goes on. Sejana leans forward. My client wants to move goods, and doesn't want the authorities to know. Does that spell it out for you? Ragnar glowers. You're with Creusian security, trying to persecute an innocent man. The smile slips away, and Sejana exudes danger when she says, Do I look like a fucking security officer? I get shit done. You move like you've got training. 10 years in the army. Oh, I've got training, but I'm not with the law. Now, are we going to make a deal or not? All right, we should roll some dice and see how this resolves. Obviously, Sejana is taking a deceptive course here, so I think it's only fair that we roll with deception. She's got a +3 in deception, and I think we can give her a +2 bonus for taking more time. After all, she's basically got him at her mercy and can work this problem until she finds the hooks in. So that's going to be a total of +5, but I think I'm going to set the difficulty at 12 because Ragnar isn't going to be easy to sway. All right, here we go. Oh, nice. 16. All right, let's envision this. Ragnar blinks and slumps back against the wall. All right. Yes, we can make a deal. What do you need moved? Sejana nods and says,
5 crates, each weighing 75 kilos. Their contents are fragile, but not combustible, so there isn't any added danger to transporting them. And since we're friends now...
She presses a button on her cue and the electro cuffs deactivate. Ragnar grimaces and rubs his wrists. When do you need them moved?
Today,
she says. That's gonna cost you extra. Sejana nods.
Of course. My client understands that an operation like this requires timing and precision. They are willing to pay for both, but there is a caveat. I need to inspect the pickup point. The cargo requires certain conditions to be met, and I have to ascertain if your location will satisfy our needs.
No one visits the safe house. That's just not how it works. Your goods, they'll be transported out and stored, but we'll set up a rendezvous for delivery. Give me a list of your requirements and I can make sure that they're satisfied. Sejana considers for a moment, toying with her gauntlet, tuning it to the right frequency. Then she focuses on his thoughts, trying to glean them in a moment of insight. We're going to roll Read Surface Thoughts again with a +3. She needs to hit an 8 to get any info, and more effect means better data. Let's see what the dice say. 10. All right, a success with 2 effect. She's going to lose 2 psi points temporarily, taking her from her maximum of 12 down to 10. And with 2 effect, I think Sejana picks up most of the coordinates, but she doesn't get the exact location. So she's going to have a search grid now, and I think she can try for a little bit more. She looks at Ragnar and says,
Very well. I understand the need for operational security. I will send you a list of requirements. But can I at least ask one question? Is your base located on land or at sea? It will impact how we package the goods.
Ragnar looks at her and says, Pack for the sea. Creusians travel by water. Always.
Very well,
she says, standing abruptly.
I will return to my client and send over all the necessary details within the hour.
Do you want to know how much it's going to cost? Sejana retrieves her electro cuffs from the floor and smiles.
It's not my money, but sure.
150,000 rue plus another 50,000 for the expediency fee. Ragnar finally looks like he's won, but Sejana shrugs and says,
Agreed. Like I said, it's not my money. I'll send you the details, and, Foreman, it's good doing business with you.
She slips out the door and heads back towards her ship. The Harrower buzzes over the open sea, flying low enough to avoid any sort of air traffic. Sejana looks at the narrowing grid. According to the coordinates she pulled from Ragnar's head, the smuggler's base has to be hidden close. She tunes up the fighter's scanners and takes another sweep of the ocean below. Time for a sensors check. The Harrower has improved sensors, which gives a +1 bonus to an electronics sensors roll. Add that to Sejana's +2 for her intellect, and we've got a +3 total. I'm going to set this check at a target number of 10. I don't think it's all that well hidden if you're looking for it. I think part of the secrecy here is that they're just basically keeping people from scanning this random section of ocean. First, though, I think we need to roll and see what the weather is like in this area. 2d6 with higher being better. Oh, Dark Star. That is a clear day. I'm going to give Sejana a boon die for this roll. Should be rolling 3d6, take the 2 highest. 13 total. That's a success with 3 effect. Let's go ahead and envision it. She tunes the sensors to focus beneath the surface and makes yet another pass. She's almost to the edge of her grid when the sensors ping a structure. There you are, she says as she locks in the coordinates. It's about 1 kilometer beneath the surface, nestled into a small piece of bedrock, jutting up from the ocean floor. Taking the Harrower lower, she sets the fighter to hover over the base's location. Then she presses a button and the seat retracts into a small, cramped pod behind the cockpit. With the finesse of practice, she removes her clothes and gear, retaining only her deep skin. Pressing another button, the seat retracts out from under her as her body is lifted onto a small frame. Panels open in the side of the pod and armor plating attaches to the deep skin until a fully formed suit of combat armor is sealed around her body. Her hand brushes against the shoulder pauldron, where the Falcon Squad emblem rests. Then she pulls her helmet on and seals it, activating the environmental controls. Finally, she magnetizes her pistol to her hip, her stunner behind her back, and pulls a kinetic rifle from its storage space. She sets a final command for the ship: remain in this position unless a ship approaches, in which case the harrower is to withdraw to a safe distance and wait to be recalled. With all that set, Sejana prepares herself and hits the activator for the drop function. The pod rotates open and angles down so she drops clear of the harrower and falls feet first toward the water below. It's early evening as the last crates are loaded onto the Howlin' Wolf. Einur looks over at Ayati and Ludin and says, "Good work, both of you. Take the rest of the night off. We'll be leaving in the morning, so don't have too much fun tonight." Ayati grins at him and says, "No worries, Cap. I'll keep Ludin in check." The younger man looks confused, but Ayati pats him on the shoulder and says, "Come on, let's go grab some food." After the two of them leave, Einur takes a few minutes to check the inventory one final time. All the codes match, and he's satisfied that nothing was missed. So he heads inside to his quarters and pulls up the quick to scan for data on Equilon. The economic forecasts he has are about 2 weeks out of date, but they should be sufficient, and he also pulls up a list of brokers that Zhang Imports has worked with before. Equilon is focused on agriculture, but unlike Strides, it's a bit more advanced and populated. Their cargo should sell well. Then they can pick up some more cargo, maybe even some passengers, depending on the look of things, and they'd be back on Davonshire within 2 weeks. If there's enough profit, maybe Mr. Zhang will finally allow Einur to upgrade the Astrodrive so they can make it further each jump. There are a few other ships in the fleet who have a higher jump capacity, and if Mr. Zhang intends to send the Wolf on these longer-range trading missions, it would be more efficient to have a higher capacity Astrodrive. An hour or two later, his comm chimes, and Einur glances at the notification in the corner of his quick screen. Frowning, he swipes away the brokerage lists and calls up the broadcast bulletin. Scanning through it, his frown deepens. It reads, "Creusian Defense Force, intercepted unknown fleet. Weapons fire exchanged. Heavy losses to Defense Force. Surviving ships in retreat. Ships have been identified as a Plithan hierarchy battle fleet. Intentions unknown, but presumed hostile." "Titan's asshole," Einur mutters. Switching over to his crew comm, he sends out an emergency message. "Get back to the Wolf immediately. We're leaving now." Sejana hits the water like a torpedo, punching into the depths. Once her momentum slows, she spins around and aims for the structure, firing the thrusters on her boots to propel her deeper. This isn't the first time she's done a deep-sea combat drop, but the waters of Creus are unlike any she's seen before. Her transit down is slowed by a large floating coral network that shifts between opalescence and a sickly black-green hue. Fish of varying sizes and shapes flit through the many caverns of the coral structures, and as Sejana nears it, she realizes that it looks as though it was once inhabited. Checking the readings on her suit, she sees that it's been afflicted by that same toxin that has tainted the atmosphere. Creusians may have lived here once, but no more. And as she passes through the maze, she sees markings, almost like paintings. The fish themselves carry that same black-green color, though it looks like something growing on their scales. They mostly scatter as she jets past them, but those Sejana sees closer don't look healthy, or even like they should still be living or moving. Once she's past the coral network, it's a fairly easy descent to the outcropping into which this structure is built. There doesn't seem to be much in the way of activity, but Sejana is going to perform another sensors check to see if she can pick up any readings, like an early detection system. We're not going to get any bonuses from the fighter this time, so it's just a +2 to this roll. I think the target number is an 8. I'm not convinced there is an early detection system, because I think they might want to reduce the amount of electronics in the area, Let the depth and it being just in the middle of nowhere serve as all the camouflage necessary. So here we go. +2 on this. 11 total. So a solid success with 3 effect. I'm going to stand by my initial gut instinct and say that Sejana doesn't detect any sort of early warning sensor network. There are minimal readings coming from the building, but she does detect an airlock. That's her objective, and the most challenging part of this operation, as there's only one way into this building. If she was still with her team, they would have set up a portable airlock on one wall of the building and cut a hole in the wall to make entrance. But she doesn't have the necessary tools. Straight in through the front door it is. She arrives at the airlock and, as expected, it's code locked. She's going to have to bypass the locks with a computer's check. +3 against a target number of 8. 12. Easy. I'm going to say that with 4 effect, she's able to prevent any sort of alert going out inside that the airlock has been activated. This brings up another question. Is this building occupied at the moment? I think it's likely that Ragnar would keep his team here at the base when they weren't on an op, but there's a chance that there's no one here. So 75 or less, Ragnar's Creusian thieves are here. Let's roll our percentile dice. 76. That is barely a no, but still a no. Let's envision this. The hatch slides open, and Sejana swims into a chamber large enough for at least 6 Creusians and several large crates of cargo. Sealing the hatch behind her, she enters the equalization sequence, and the pressure adjusts to near surface levels. The water doesn't drain out, which Sejana realizes makes sense. If the Creusians are the ones who come and go from this warehouse, there's no reason to drain the water. It will make it more challenging for her to sweep the building, but she's confident that her combat suit will help her. The interior hatch opens, and Sejana raises her rifle, magnetizing her boots to the floor and sweeping into the next room. The building is dark, so her combat suit automatically activates an infrared overlay, and there are no immediate heat signatures present. Tapping into the internal network of the building, she activates the lights and sees a large warehouse with a variety of crates stored in corners and sections. There's a doorway on the far side, but other than that, there are no discernible other parts to this building. Crossing the warehouse, she makes a thorough sweep behind crates and anywhere someone could be hiding. Satisfied, she approaches the door and opens it, sweeping it with her rifle. This room is smaller than the warehouse and looks like a dormitory. Almost a dozen folds of seaweed grow out of the wall, and Sejana intuits them as beds. Empty beds. After a cursory search, Sejana is confident she is alone in the warehouse, an unexpected but pleasant turn of events. Slinging her kinetic rifle down to her side, she pulls up her queue and begins scanning for her crates. Let's make one more sensors check. I think the target number is still 8 because there's a decent amount of stuff here, and we're rolling at +2, 9 total. I was definitely thinking a failure might lead to a team returning before she found the crates, but with a success, I think she finds the 3 crates easily. They are netted together and tied into place. She unties them and lifts the net, attaching the cable to her suit before making her way back toward the hatch. The transit back to the surface is a little slower as the crates represent a fair amount of drag, but with a little extra juice, her thrusters push her back up to the surface where the harrower is hovering right where she left it. Entering a command to the autopilot, she watches as the harrower lowers a cable down, which Sejana attaches to the cargo netting before grabbing hold of it and bracing her foot on the hook. Hitting the retractor, she and the cargo ascend from the water into the waiting cargo hold of her fighter. She takes a moment to situate the cargo and divest herself of the combat armor before sliding back into the cockpit. Her first order of business is to fire off a message to Creusian security with the exact coordinates and a description of what she saw inside. Second, she sets a course for Creusis and engages her astrodrive, sending the harrower arcing towards the starport. Finally, she sends a message to K. Murad, informing him she is returning with his cargo and to not trust the Lupanian twins, that they were paid off by Tomiko Freeman of the Hector to look the other way. Now, I feel like we should make a roll to determine what time it is, because I've been loosely keeping track, and I think it could reasonably be late afternoon or early evening. If it's a little later, there's a possibility she'll get the message from Einur before she's able to connect with Murad. Remember, there's 95,000 Ru on the line here. So I'm going to roll 2d6, and if it's a 10 or higher, this mission took longer than she expected, and she's going to receive Einur's message on the flight back to the starport. She'll have to decide if she's going to ignore it and finish her contract or follow up with him and go back to the ship. All right, 2d6. 9. Okay. So it's early evening, but currently Einur is still scanning through brokerage reports for Equilon. So Sejana sends that message and receives confirmation from Murad. The Harrower returns to the starport as the sun is starting to dip beyond the horizon. And as Sejana lowers the fighter through the entry airlock, she pauses for a heartbeat to admire the beauty and wonder of a sun setting across a vast sea. She hovers the Harrower close to the Atua Fafine, opening the cargo bay and lowering the cargo cable with the attached net of 3 crates. She rides it down and detaches the cable before ordering the Harrower to dock with the Wolf. The hatch to the Atua Fafine opens and K. Murad emerges with a frown, the twin Lupanians in tow. Sejana shifts and feels her laser pistol pressing against her rib, ready to be pulled if necessary. The merchant approaches and looks at the crates, scanning them with his cue. He nods and turns to the Lupanians and says, "Take these inside." The twins approach, and each grab a crate, turning back towards the ship. Murad waits for them to disappear inside before saying, "You're sure the twins were complicit in this?" Sejana pulls up the information she uncovered and sends it to his queue. "This has all the information I was able to retrieve. I'll leave it for you to do with as you will." Murad grunts and says, "All right, I appreciate your help." He dismisses the evidence and calls up his business account. "I'll transmit the Ru." Sejana nods. "Good luck in your endeavors." At this point, one of the twins returns and grabs the other crate to carry it inside. Murad watches him for a brief moment before his comm chimes. Frowning, he glances at it and says, "Excuse me." He turns and hurries back inside. Turning, Sejana begins walking back to the Wolf. She only makes it a few steps before she notices an uptick in activity on the docks. People who are walking start running toward their ships. A few of the docked vessels' engines start thrumming as they begin warming up. She's about to check her queue for any news reports when Einur's message arrives, recalling the crew to the ship. She opens a comm to the captain, who answers almost immediately.
"Lushale, I'm glad you calmed in. You're the one I was worried about. How far out are you?"
"I'm walking back to the ship from the Atua Fafine's docking platform. What's going on?" Sejana isn't entirely sure she's seen Einur afraid before, but his eyes are just a little wild, and it's obvious he's on the bridge running the Wolf through its startup sequence.
"A Blithen Hierarchy fleet entered the system a few hours ago. They're headed this way."
"Shit," Sejana says.
"My thoughts exactly. Get your ass back here."
Einur cuts the comm, and Sejana starts running with everyone else. Thanks for listening to Errant Adventures. If you enjoyed the show, please spread the word. And if you want to support the show directly, leave me a review or support me on Patreon at patreon.com/errantadventures. You can also buy me a coffee at ko-fi.com/errantadventures. If you want to interact with me, my handle on all the socials is @errantsolopod, or you can email me at errantsolopod@gmail.com. I also post short fiction and campaign-related materials on my website, errantadventurespod.com. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you in the deep, liars.